South Africa and Russia after there was an agreement that Russia's President Vladimir Putin would not attend the BRICS summit in person. That announcement was made by the presidency this past week. Let's bring in Professor Sam Koma now, who is an international law expert. Prof, thank you for making time for us. What do you make of how long it's taken for President Vladimir Putin to be persuaded to attend this BRICS summit virtually? I mean, these negotiations have been taking place for a while now.
Yes, thanks, Lemon. So yes, because initially when this issue came to the fore, I think the South African government thought that they can, one, explore the issue of diplomatic immunity and also use other diplomatic channels as part of persuading President Putin to consider the issue of having to come to South Africa in person, despite the warrant issued by the international arrest also previously. Was that at the core of this issue was more about legality, because South Africa is bound by the Rome Statute, and it is a signatory to the Rome Statute, and it imposes crucial obligations on the part of the South African government. But also in 2002, the South African Parliament enacted the Implementation Act of the Rome Statute. And in the preamble of the legislation, in part, it says that South Africa, with its own bringing persons who commit such atrocities to justice through using our own courts, bearing in mind that the Implementation Act and the Rome Statute grants jurisdiction to South African courts to prosecute any person who is alleged to have committed international crimes, which includes war crimes. So at the end of the day, what won was the art of persuasion on the part of the South African president, that is Ramaphosa, working in tandem with the BRICS family.
Yeah. According to your
because we now know that the heads of the... Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that, Prof. I think we've got some delay. I wanted to say, according to a supplementary affidavit by the president last week, this agreement with Putin was reached in June already. The president asked that they keep it confidential as he was still consulting with BRICS leaders. Was this the best option, you think, asking Putin not to come, given that he's one of the founding members of BRICS? Or could they have not decided, I don't know, on hosting this summit in another country?
Yeah. Thanks, Chairman. Yes, so this was a correct and principled decision taken by the South African government in persuading President Putin not to visit South Africa in person. As I said earlier, this is the decision that they had to take as part of ensuring that the South African government is not seen to be acting inconsistent with its own laws, and very important, the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. So this is also a victory for our independent judiciary, because on two occasions our courts have taken decisions around, one, the Omar al-Bashir matter, and now the Putin matter. They've done so without fear, favor, and also prejudice, and irrespective of a sitting president of the Republic of South Africa. So kudos to our judiciary. They've also proven that they are indeed the guardian of the Constitution of South Africa.
Mm-hmm. How did government handle this? I mean, it's a delicate matter. On the one hand, you want to respect the law and the legal obligation to the Rome Statute. On the other hand, you don't want to alienate President Vladimir Putin, but also you don't want to upset the West, especially now when things like AGOA are up in the air. How did our government handle this, in your view?
Yes, Clement. So it's a multidimensional issue, right? It touches on the issue of politics, geopolitics. South Africa didn't want to be isolated politically. It also touches on possible economic sanctions which could have been imposed on South Africa by the West in particular if it failed to handle the Putin matter, but very important, affecting the decision taken by the International Criminal Court. Because at the end of the day, the South African government had to honor its own obligations arising from the Rome Statute. Yes, indeed, South Africa has ties, friendship, and relations with Russia built over a considerable period of time, but South Africa is a sovereign state, and it had to take a decision that is in the best interest of the country in political, economic, and legal terms.
Mm-hmm. Where does this leave Vladimir Putin? He cares about how the world looks at him. He wants to maintain the perception that he's in charge, that he hasn't lost control. But this move by Pretoria to ask him to stay put and rather send a delegation doesn't bode well for that perception he wants to maintain. It makes him seem like he's isolated, like he's beginning, to see the impact of this war in Ukraine, because now his movement is now restricted. He can't come here because there's a warrant of arrest that's linked to the war in Ukraine.
Yes, Clement. So for President Putin, he can always count on his African counterparts. You remember, sometime this year already we had a delegation of heads of African governments who visited Russia to sit with President Putin as part of having a dialogue, and very important to find a peaceful resolution to the Ukrainian-Russian war. So I think on the part of Putin, when it comes to Africa, he knows that he can count on his counterparts. These are his progressive forces, but also he can count on progressive forces that are part of the global South.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thank you so much for joining us for this chat, Professor Sam Koma, an international law expert.